because queen d8 is looking passive, but the pawn can never go backwards, and that is such a painful fact.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, not necessarily it's a bad move, a4, a5, but moving
but on the
your
long
pawns,
run, it could be a problem.
Moving your pawns, you've got to be very, very careful. I'm guessing knight e5 partly justifies this knight's position on b3, so that d4 pawn is protected. After bishop e2, queen e2, you can't take d4. And actually, you know what? Looking at this, I kind of like white here.
With knight e5, I start to like
I will chase this one away, winning a tempo. And for instance, if black plays something modest like bishop e7, I'm guessing I'll play f3. So this knight has to go, don't know, f6 or d6. And then in case of knight d6, maybe I can do something like that.
That would really justify the knight on b3. And also eliminating the c6 knight means that the a5 pawn will not be hanging.
a5 pawn is safe, d4 pawn is not hanging. Yes,
so this knight e5 move looks the best in this position, following up the plan of having the knight on b3 and pushing a5. But if she doesn't do that, then I think black is just fine.
Yeah, I mean, because otherwise you will really, really have to slow down and play something like c3, because I really think that bishop b4 is a threat, in fact. I mean, not so many moves anyway for white. I mean, you might, let's say, play something like rook e1, but you don't really know if it's a useful move or not. So probably the time has come for something like knight e5. Right, on board 2, we have a position in which, yeah, it's a French defense apparently, and Katerina Larnaut has sacrificed a pawn at a very, very early stage. So French defense, knight d2 variation, knight f6, e5, knight f d7, bishop to d3. Up to this point, no surprises, and then the usual move used to be this knight to e2, so that the other knight can go to f3 and protect the d4 pawn. Knight gf3, well known as well, but I won't say it's white's main move here. It's far more ambitious, because after queen b6, you don't have a comfortable way to protect the c5 pawn.
And that's the point of this whole variation as white, that white wants to sacrifice the d4 pawn for initiative.
Yeah. So queen b6 is more precise than the previous capture, because here white would have had knight b3 protecting the pawn. Yeah, after an immediate queen b6, knight b3 of course is not an option due to c4 castles, but this is according to white's plan. So black takes the pawn but spends tempi here, and then it's a3, bishop e7, then, yeah, that's interesting, bishop goes to e3, another pawn is offered, but
that would be too much.
That would be too much immediately. Bishop d4 traps the queen, if I see it correctly. Right, so black plays bishop c5, bishop d2. It's interesting.
Yes.
So after a3, black could have gone this, and white would not play bishop d2 in this case, but would go b4, right? Anyway, after bishop d2, I'm guessing her plan is to play b4 to chase the bishop away. So this is how you play after queen b6, doesn't matter what the position. So when I was suggesting after queen b6 here on board 1 to sacrifice the pawn, you know. So on board 2, Katerina Larnaut went to sacrifice the pawn, and she will try to prove. By the way, b4 might be not the cleverest idea, because after castle, I'm guessing this might already work.
Yeah, you shouldn't castle in this position as black without
Bishop
the knight on f6.
H7 and knight g5. Let's see if it works. Okay, this should be working. Threatening mate, and after rook e8,
take on
I just take f7. Yeah, it's got to be rook d8 at least, not to say not to drop the rook. Probably loses a mate. Yeah, it's made by force, right? Check, and this is known. It's mate on f7. Long run, long line, but everything with a check.
And very forced, so there's not even a sideline.
Yeah, and basically, this is.
The other option is always king g6 that you need to calculate before capturing on h7.
Check. Yeah, I was trying to remember. There is no specific name. It's known as a bishop h7 sacrifice.
Isn't it the Greek gift?
Could be.
I thought it's called Greek gift when you
Okay.
take on h7, but maybe that's taking on h7 and g7 at the same time, because sometimes it's a double bishop sacrifice.
Yeah, double bishop sacrifice. I'm perfectly sure it's Laska's bishop sacrifice, because
Okay,
it was a
so
matter
then-
of Laska to sacrifice first. So bishop h7.
Then I
king
think this
h7,
is the
yeah.
Greek
So
gift.
this could be a great.
At least that's how I learned it.
Yeah. Okay. King goes to g6. This is much trickier than king to g8, but still could be. Well, actually, I don't know. Here, I thought queen g4, but then I mean it's much trickier. Knight e5 and queen h4 threatening this, and it might not work as well. Because, yeah, there are two ways usually. It's either queen c2 or queen g4, right? Queen c2, I can't make it after f5.
You
Because
can
I
at least win back
I can
the
take
material.
and give a check and take a fate, but I'm left without active pieces. This is something I don't like. I can try to play like this, though. Rook e1. You know, if rook e8, then still black is not very comfortable. Ah, well, maybe this works. Check,
Bringing the
and then
queen
queen
to
to f3. I would be really, really scared with black. So,
No, usually in the French defense, once your knight is chased away from f6, you do not want to castle, because this bishop h7 works so often.
yeah, well, the thing is, can black simply play bishop e7 back to cover g5 square? And, well, claim that bishop c1, d2. Okay, we had this position with white's bishop on c1, but does really bishop d2 help all that much? This is the question. Then I'm wondering, apart from Trafford at b4, there might be an interesting queen switch to a king side. So a queen a4 move, and if black castles, then something with queen g4 possibly, and you can see all the white pieces directed towards the black king.
Yeah, this is a very usual queen lift in this variation. So since there's no d4 pawn, you have sacrificed it. You can use the fourth rank.
At least, yeah.
So it is a very interesting line as white, and I think very dangerous as well if you don't know it properly as black. So Voti Kim Fung needs to remember this variation. If not, she can get into trouble right from the opening.
Right, and look. This is board 3, and Nguyen Thai Mait Hung. I'm sorry if I mispronounce this one, it's not very easy. Against Valentina Gunina. Gunina was, I think, simply the first game of this tournament,
The women's
which was
tournament.
finished. And not only the women's tournament, I think the whole event.
She had a
Winning
already
position
a
quite
piece
quickly, right.
advantage, but her opponent kept on playing. So we saw a few other results,
Anyway,
but
so,
first score, yes.
Yeah, Gunina scored the first victory in the tournament, and she's usually, if she's in the form, I mean, it's a really, but she can really show a great result, not only good chess-wise, but also, you know, the results are usually very good for Valentina Gunina. Why I was excited when I switched to this game, it probably will not happen in our game, but this looks somewhat similar to this. I mean, white setup looks somewhat similar to this game I've mentioned, the Laska's sacrifice. Two bishops directed towards the king side. After cd4, I'm guessing this would be a possibility to keep the bishop here. I won't be all that relaxed with black.
It's interesting to see this position with Gunina playing with the black pieces, because I would expect her enjoying this position so much if she
With
was white.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, if you can take with the pawn as well, but then bishop on b2 is not doing all that much. So I thought bishop d4, and then somehow it's not very comfortable. Bishop on b7 is passive. Maybe knight e4 will be needed this way or another. Because otherwise, white has a very straightforward plan, moving the g-pawn or simply lifting the rook to g3.
And there are just so many white pieces attacking the king, so this is very, very pleasant.
Yeah, we should see what's going to happen here. And on board 4, Alexandra Goryachkina makes her debut in this tournament. She was not playing. Yesterday was Olga Giria, but since she lost, she got replaced by Alexandra Goryachkina. a Russian champion in 2015, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, very strong player, youngest in the team. Russia won twice against Vietnam in
3 times now we are being informed.
yeah.
So each time they played, the Russian team prevailed. Today is a chance for the Vietnamese ladies to prove that the stats don't always say what's going to happen. So this is not a prediction. This is just what happened in previous editions.
Right. So a Grunfeld was played. Bishop e3, Queen d2, and yep, I'm probably a wrong person to talk about the Grunfeld. But yeah, this.
Shall we call board 1 of Russia?
Yeah, board 1 of Russia. Yeah, that's Peter Swidler we are talking about, obviously, and I believe everybody knows his brilliant video series on Grunfeld. Right. I always thought this capture on d4 kind of unties Weiss a little bit. So as long as you can keep it, let's say, as long as you can do it, so kind of Queen a5, all those moves looked like more Grunfeldish in a way. So c takes, knight to c6, bishop b5, bishop d7, knight e2. But this looks like kind of a mixture of all the possible plans. Castles, and then this tricky little move, knight e5, which might solve all the problems for black.
Funny way to trade pieces.
Yeah, might solve all the problems for black, because, yeah, obviously if you take on e5, black will take b5, and I'm guessing bishop d7 is not answered by knight d7, but rather knight c4. Here, and then takes e3, and probably doesn't matter what white takes with. It's just a pleasant position for black to play. I would try to take with the pawn apparently, so that at least d4 is not hanging. Because this, in a way, looks somewhat more pleasant for white. I mean, rook b1, rook c1, you know, center somehow is stable. But in this other line, yeah, it might be black's queenside majority, which becomes a serious factor, plus the bishop protects the king well, and possibly after bishop h6 might also press the pawns.
And as for white, these pawns, the double e pawns, are unlikely that will ever become passed pawns.
Yeah, right. So I'm guessing black just played this knight e5, after which he has to be absolutely fine.
Do you think that Goryachkina missed this idea?
Yeah, it is possible. It is possible. Things she's thinking here, it's, say, for Grunfeld standards, it's a little bit early to be out of theory. That move 12, yeah. But what she was doing, I mean, this bishop b5, knight e2 doesn't look all that well together. So it looks like a mixture of various plans. So after knight e5, it looks, at least on board 4, Vietnamese managed to solve their opening problems. Altogether, the match doesn't look all that bad for Vietnam.
Yeah, this has been the case yesterday too, that we saw the underdogs putting up a very good fight, good opening preparation. Also in the middle game, we didn't see much trouble for the weaker teams, but as we approach the time trouble, that's usually when problems start.
Where mistakes are made, right. And yeah, it's not enough to get the equal position. It's not enough to get a better position. Yeah, the big guys, those tough opponents, they are known to stand the pressure for 3 hours, 4 hours. As long as the game goes, yeah, they are ready to keep the pressure. That's perhaps what separates them from the, let's say, from the lower-rated players. Okay, so back to open. Shall we?
Yeah, shall we have a look at once again the China-India match, since we only saw the first few moves?
We've seen only first few moves.
And this is going to be a very exciting game. Dingley ran with it, Santosh.
Yeah, after bishop e7, bishop g2 is one of the slower ways to play this position, but Dingley Ren is ready to invest this h2, h3 tempo. Yesterday he was playing a known position tempo down, right? So today he does, well, more or less the same, but I think this is much more to the point, because it's very important for white to get the space on the king's side, to make sure that black is not castling. That's what I wanted to say. Black just castled.
And he doesn't mind that his pawn is hanging on g5.
Yeah, bishop e3, this is a known trick. If you take, it's knight e6 and
Beautiful.
the check, and white gets much better ending with
And the pawn
two
structure
bishops,
of black is worse, so
two
it's better
bishops and
bishops
d6.
and better
d6 is a weak
structure.
pawn. Yeah, so bishop g5 is not an option. b5, a3, same tactical trick in case of bishop g5. Bishop b7 and yeah, h3, h4.
So it was still not necessary to defend the pawn, but he's simply expanding on the king
Yeah,
side.
h4. Rook g1, very straightforward, I have to say. Knight c5, f2, f3, and black just castled short.
He's a brave guy.
Yeah, so white will sooner or later castle long and then will try to attack this king. Even though with a2, a3 played, white's king won't be all that safe even after a long castle, because b4 will come one
At
day.
the moment, it's safer in the middle of the board.
Yeah, it could be that you want to keep the king in the center.
You can go to f2 sometimes, but maybe not in this position.
Yeah, okay, let's make a few moves so that I'll be able to illustrate white's trafarette idea in this one. I say black goes, I don't know, knight a5 is a terribly bad move, knight e5, but this doesn't allow me to do what I wanted to do.
What did you want
maybe-
to show?
Okay, let's go knight a5, which is a bad move, people. g6, this is how they attacked. This is how they attack.
You give up first
not
the g pawn.
h5, not h5 and g6, because it's kind of one more tempo, and then black would not react to g6. But we start with g6, and then
So black is forced
h
to take
takes,
this.
and then it's h5, and it's very, very annoying usually, because g5 I'll take, and then g7 is weak. If you take here, then, you know, it's not necessarily that it works in this position, but yeah, the idea is such that, yeah.
It happens so
sooner or
often
later,
in the Sicilian that you launch this pawn
some
attack.
queen h2, you know, attacking h5, and it's not the material what matters, but who is faster to get to opponent's king.
Sure, with opposite side castling, you shall know that it doesn't matter how many pawns or how many pieces sometimes that you sacrifice, but you should be quick.
Yeah, by the way, first move in this direction was just made, queen d2. So, anyway, yeah, it's kind of a multi-purpose move. Queen is much better placed on d2, so it's still not clear if he's going to castle. But yeah, so that's the position.
This is going to be a very exciting game that we shall have a look at from time to time, because I think for a board one clash, this opening choice, kudos to both players, so that they are providing us entertainment.
Right, so I'm curious to see if that was corrected, this Russia versus Turkey, this game. No, not really. Not really. It still says something weird, this Yilmaz versus Vitugov, so we'll have to figure out what is this during the short break. So stay with us. After some 10 minutes, we'll be back commentating on round 2.
welcome back to the broadcast of the 2017 World Team Chess Championship in Khanty-Mансийск, Russia. Before we continue with the games, let us briefly go through the composition of the event, why these teams are qualified to play the World Team Championship. That was a question that we received on Twitter, and you can also tell us your questions by using the hashtag #UGRAChess. So this is a competition that is organized every 2 years. One of the teams that qualifies is always the defending champion being China and Georgia, China in the open section and Georgia in the women's section. Then there are 4 continental championships, and every champion from their continent qualifies.
So that has to be Russia in both sections, in fact? I think Russia is
Yes,
the
Russia
European
in
champion in both sections.
You're right.
Then it's Egypt in both sections for Africa.
True. For America, it's the United States, and for Asia, in the open section, it's India. And
Right.
for the ladies, it's China.
It's China.
I almost forgot, but luckily I have notes.
Yeah, and it must be United States for both women, and from America it's both United
True.
States in both sections.
Apart from these spots, there are 3 spots from the previous Chess Olympiad. So 3 teams qualify from the Chess Olympiad. And since some of the teams that finished on the podium already qualified from continental championships, that led to, for instance, Norway and Turkey qualifying in the open section, and Ukraine and India making it to the World Team Championship because of their Baku nice finish. So, for instance, Norway finished 5th at the Baku Chess Olympiad, Turkey finished 6th, Ukraine was a bronze medalist in the women's section at Baku, and India finished 5th. Apart from these teams, so these are 8 teams that we have mentioned so far, there are 2 wild cards. One wild card by the host. So normally that gives a chance for the host country to allow their national team participate, but in case of Russia that was not necessary.
Right.
So they
and
gave...
I think this card went to Belarus in the open section, and then apparently to Azerbaijan in the ladies section.
Yes, and there's another wild card by the FIDE president. So in fact there are 2 wild cards in both sections, one by the host, the organizers, and another by the FIDE president. In both cases it mainly went to the teams that finished on one of the top spots at the Baku Chess Olympiad. So it's great to see that they mainly use the Chess Olympiad as to determine which teams are in the best shape and which teams shall fight for the World Champions title.
Right, and I think we are ready to go back to the playing hall again. Yes, back to a match between China and India, and I'm guessing back to a top board again. 2 more moves were played. After Queen D2, Rook B8, somewhat mysterious move. The file is closed, right? And remember, the move I was making was Rook C8, which is like the first thing you do. You put the rook to the open file. But Rook B8 is a bit more clever, I would claim, because after castles, it gives white a possibility. It gives black a possibility to go B4 immediately, and then after takes, knight takes, rook all of a sudden finds itself on the b file, which is probably more useful. And then after queen c7, the other rook might go to a c file.
So that's why it's more useful to make a kingside move and wait with castling.
Yeah, so that's what white does. h5, and after queen c7, Dingley played queen to h2. So now he's getting ready, really, for this g6 thing. And he
might not castle yet.
Yeah, he might not castle yet. He's creating, I'm guessing, the threat of, okay, let's make a silly move for black. Rook e8, the move which will never be played. Knight b5, bishop c5, a little tactic. So using this pin, white wins the pawn, which is maybe not such an important factor at the moment, but still it's nice to win it. What black has to do, I mean, probably white's main threat is not to take this b5 pawn, but to come up with g5, g6. Even if not immediately, but you always have to be aware with black. I'm guessing knight e5 you will consider here.
And at least black has some tactical ideas about the
there
b4
are some
knight.
ideas with capturing f3. I'm still not sure what's going to happen in this case. Can it be that after knight e5 I can castle long? Because an immediate b4 now doesn't seem to work. b4 I'll just take, right, chasing the knight away. After castle long, and I'm probably ready for f4 and then g6 later. I kind of like white, knowing how dangerous attacking player Dingley Ren is. Yeah, his ability of calculating all those lines.
The time situation is roughly equal, so
It's 1 hour each after the opening.
we assume that they are both out of the book by now, and this is going to be about the middle game. Of course, when these strong players prepare the opening, they don't only prepare the first moves, but also they study the middle game, but in terms of plans and ideas, so it's not something that they memorize move by move.
Right, so that's the most exciting game in this match, because other three are kept much more quiet. So two games where China has the black pieces are both pretty much simplified and somewhat similar structure. So E file is open in this one, Atiban versus Yu Yang. White has a bit more space, but yeah, I think black with precise defense have to be able to hold this one. And on board 4, Negi and Li Chao, that's the position here. Once again, open e-file, nobody has any space advantage, anything. I'm guessing it's just around equal.
Roughly equal.
Has to be around equal. And on board 3,
Between Wei and Sasekiran, that's another interesting game.
Yeah, well, it's, as I said, kept quiet for a little bit, but yeah, 16 moves made, not a single pawn being exchanged, which gives you an idea how complex this is, and it can, in fact, can go either way. As for the moment, white has some achievements, this pawn on a5, but interestingly, I've seen it quite often that, well, especially if those bishops getting exchanged somehow, black has a very nice square on a b5 for his rook. Bishops, though, are unlikely to get exchanged. I mean, somewhere here, if bishops are exchanged, then rook can be put on b5. And this way, after knight fd2, I'm guessing white doesn't have an idea. Yeah, you simply cannot move the knight from c4 anyway. So
and sometimes bishop a4.
Bishop a4 is a little disturbing move, so that this knight proves to be not stable on c6. Plus f2, f4 might become an idea. So this is interesting so far. It looks like, you know, this board 1 might decide the match. In fact, because other 3 are very solid. On board 3, it's still very complex, but can be a draw potentially. And this is certainly a very, very sharp game. Dingley Ren versus Vidit. I've got informed. Well, the mystery was solved. This Vityugov's game against Mustafa Yilmaz.
The queens are back on the board.
Yeah, the queens are back on the board. The game has finished, and it was a draw in the theoretical line. Remember when I've seen gf6 played and queen on a5, this one, rook c1, queen a5. I've managed to figure out it was a Vienna variation of queen's gambit. This is known. I check. I think it's just, yeah, if white wants, it's draw by force. That's precisely what white did. e5 and queen h5. Some queen g5 ideas, apparently. Knight d7, check, king f8. Yeah, it's rather straightforward. Takes on c8, takes on d7.
So it's all been theory.
Yeah, it's all been theory, and I don't even think that we have to comment on this one, because yeah, there is a lot of tactic as one can see. Queen d8. Yeah, black wants to exchange queens. If you take, then you lose one of your pieces. So knight e6, queen h6 happens to be just a perpetual check. Queen e6 check and queen h6 check. You don't go there, don't you? Yeah.
So this is the case when a very well prepared underdog, Mustafa Yilmaz being the lower rated player, but with the white pieces, and since he prepared very well, he knows this theoretical line, and Nikita Vityugov didn't want to avoid entering this line, so it ended up in a draw.
But
Seems that both players are happy with the result.
yeah, but it leaves Turkish team with 2 black games in which, of course, they will have more trouble. So I'm wondering, yeah, just quickly to check, Swidler versus Dragan Sholak. So that was the position after 4 moves. Clear hint that black is ready to play a King's Indian. White went for bishop g5. Apparently opting for something like, yeah, actually I'm not sure what Peter Swidler's intentions were, because you can play queen d2, you can play e3, both are possible. Black immediately went for h6, g5 and knight h5 to take this bishop. e3, c5, d5. So this way black gets a very strong bishop on g7, control over the dark squares. But black's problem is that somewhat compromised structure. Yeah, the h6, g5. After a few more moves, it will become clear. Bishop e2, right? And you never ever want to castle short. I mean, here it's simply not possible because of knight g5, right? But even if, say, you take f3, this will improve white structure a great deal. I'm guessing Peter will take with the pawn and then later play f4. And once again, you probably don't want this, f4,
Not
and
really.
then, yeah. And castle long in this structure is sort of problematic. I mean, you will have to find, yeah, probably you don't take f3. You will have to find the place for all of your guys here. So bishop d7 and queen, already with the queen, I'm not sure. Queen on b6 is not doing all that much.
Yes, so black's other problem is that he's lacking space, so it's not so comfortable to place your pieces.
Yeah, e6, which might be an idea, and to kind of to try to get some sort of a Benoni structure, but white will not recapture with the pawn, I'm guessing. White can play rook d1 or even castle long maybe, so that after e d5 he will take with the knight, getting a strong knight on d5. Maybe castle long is too much, you know. This looks safer. This looks safer. King will be safe even on f1, because usually you want to connect your rooks, but here rook on d1 does some job, rook on h1 is not badly placed, so maybe you're fine with king being on f1. Right, so potentially a good position for Peter Swidler, and then it's a King's Indian, and this is not the name of the opening, this is the evaluation of this position. Matlakov against Emre Can, because yeah, white has nearly everything he wants, a lot of space, but it's a King's Indian, so black's potential for a counterplay should not be underestimated. One day this knight leaves, black goes f5, and even if it's objectively good for white, it's very, very messy, and one has to calculate properly, one has to be creative, and basically this is where the game starts usually. Because nowadays you can rarely win a game against King's Indian not being attacked. Yeah,
True.
there were in the old times, let's say, where players would not understand the position all that nice. You could win a nice positional game, kind of claiming that the bishop on g7 is not doing much, getting space on both wings, winning a nice positional game. Not here. I'm afraid it will be really, really tough for Matlakov, even though his position looks very nice. And on board 4, we have Wahab Shanal for Turkey versus Vladimir Fedoseev. So both, to remind you, both Matlakov and Fedoseev made it to a Russian team in the very last moment after a successful performance at the European.
One European champion and the other a bronze medal, so of course it was a very logical move by the Russian captain that he replaced 2 experienced players, Yakovenko and Inarkiev, former European champions, by the new generation Matlakov and Fedoseev, who played an excellent European championship just a week ago.
All right, and this looks pretty comfortable for black. In fact, white already has to be careful about potential sacrifices on h3. I'm guessing queen f3 will. Honestly, I don't know if. I know bishop h3 is not such a threat. I just realized that I can play knight c4, for instance, because it looks attractive, but since g2 is protected, there isn't a single check. And yeah, and black is unlikely to get the rook on the 6th rank. I thought of f5, so to cover cover g4 square, but then white takes, and after rook a6, white is just in time to play queen g4. So maybe...
So bishop takes h3 is not a threat.
Yeah, maybe bishop h3 is not a threat. This is usually very, very solid for both sides. I mean, this kind of positions. I can't imagine. I mean, black optically looks quite nice. I mean, it's a nice bishop, right? Stable in the center, everything. But in terms of, once again, in terms of plans, in terms of moving the pawns, it's not really easy to suggest a plan for black. So therefore, white usually is very, very safe. Okay, so I think that's the plan for Turkish team today. I mean, they want, once again, they want to be solid, and they wouldn't mind to make another 4 draws.
We shall see if they can do that. You also mentioned that they are capable of beating the Russian team.
Yeah,
it already happened.
Yeah, once it happened that they've beaten Russia in the European Team Championship in 2013 in Warsaw. And it was Russia with Grishik, so arguably a stronger team composition. I was Grishik on board 1, Swidler, Tomaszewski, and someone else. It was quite a strong team. Yeah,
and
Turkey won +1. Yeah, so they can produce some surprises here and there.
We see the captain of the Turkish team, by the way, Michael Krasenkov from Poland, that trains now the Turkish players. Many of these captains, by the way, are famous coaches, or they were famous already as players.
As players, right.
Andrei Filatov is the captain of the Russian national team. He is the president of the Russian Chess Federation. As you mentioned yesterday, he's not here simply because it's nice to say that he's the captain, but yeah, he loves chess.
He really is interested about what's going on in the games, and yeah, he's keen to see what his team